Okay, I think we'll make a start. I just want to say hi there, everyone, and good morning, and welcome back to the third in the series of our EMEA Partner Masterclasses. My name is Mark Mason. I have the pleasure of leading our partner business in the region. And the aim of these sessions, as mentioned before, is to provide guidance and insight into how we position our enterprise tool sets, the use cases and the value that we're providing to our customers, and to hear from some of our remarkable field sales teams. Today, we're joined by Dan McTeer, who is a senior sales engineer with a specialization in Vault, and Rajiv Sodhi, who is an enterprise salesperson from our Benelux business, who's had phenomenal success in driving hugely valuable outcomes for some of our largest global customers. If there are any questions throughout the session, please do ask them in the Q&A box below. Obviously, as mentioned, the session today focuses on Vault. And with that, Dan, I will pass over to you.
Hey, Mark, thanks. It's really great to be here and participate in another masterclass where we'll be discussing Vault in particular and some of the philosophies around the core of Vault and why it was developed. So thank you for joining us today. Once again, my name is Dan McTeer. Previous to working at HashiCorp, I worked at Adobe where I ran Vault as a shared service for the company on a global level. And then all before that, my experience is all in technical operations, running large-scale shared services for global companies. So pretty extensive background in shared services. My education is all in security, pretty well-rounded knowledge of tools like this and how to use them and why to use them. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. The state of secrets currently and why there's a need to shift our train of thought and our style for managing secrets and storing secrets to kind of adapt to our modern day environment. So back in 2019, shortly before I joined HashiCorp, I received an email indicating that my contact information for my Marriott Rewards account had been updated. I'm getting old, my memory isn't great, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't triggered by me. So I started to dig into it a little bit. I pretty quickly discovered that my email address had been pointed to some random site in Croatia that was no longer managed by the person who owned it. And I just assumed that this was kind of a dumping ground for other rewards accounts that were being stolen, basically. This person used an email account attached to this website to start dumping my reward points and sending them to other places, basically selling them, I'm assuming, to other people. So luckily, I was able to work with Marriott to get that all sorted out and get my rewards points back, which was fantastic. But events like this, breaches like this are just becoming all too common these days and just creating a lot of chaos in the day-to-day lives of millions of people, not just companies, but also their customers. Just to kind of quickly touch on that hack that happened back in 2018, more than 500 million guests were impacted by this hack. The stolen records included things like passport information, contact details, credit card data, all that sorts of thing, our most private pieces of information. As the details around this event started to unfold, it was determined that access to the systems had been maintained for over 4 years, unbeknownst to the technical staff that managed those systems. Basically, what happened is the attackers built themselves a backdoor into the Starwood Hotels infrastructure. And then once Marriott purchased Starwood Hotels, they basically merged their network into the Marriott network. And now all of a sudden, those attackers had full access to the entire Marriott network. Pretty crazy stuff. So access to these systems was only discovered when a security analyst happened to be looking through some things that were going on at different layers of Marriott applications. And they discovered that some privileged credentials were being used to, some privileged database credentials, in fact, were being used to access data or search data in a way that wouldn't normally be happening. So that threw some red flags. They started to dig in and finally found this person or these people that had been sitting in their systems for years. As a result of that breach, Marriott paid over $28 million just to clean up their systems. In addition to that, the UK fined them another $120 million for compromising, obviously, the private information of their citizens. And we're not really sure how many other fines they were required to pay or things like that. There was a lot of money involved in this one single breach. So luckily, lightning never strikes in the same place twice, right? It so happened that, again, the next year in 2019, Marriott was hacked again. This time it was 90% fewer customers that were impacted, but still a pretty significant number. And the same exact information was stolen. Passport information, contact deals, credit card data, things like that. The attackers in this instance happened to gain access to the Marriott systems through stolen credentials of 2 legitimate employees. So these were legitimate, valid credentials in both cases, but because Marriott and most other companies, frankly, have difficulty rotating credentials properly, those credentials can be compromised and then used in what appears to be legitimate access by these attackers, and they can just continue to access that data for years and years in some cases. The most shocking revelation in this second hack, though, was that the keys used to encrypt the credit card data were being stored right with the encrypted data. So kind of useless in that case. Pretty crazy stuff going on. Marriott is now a Vault customer. I'm not so certain it was directly related to the 2 hacks, but I know that was probably part of the initiative, at least to move to a different style, a different method of password management. So here's some pretty staggering numbers. These are based off of the latest version of the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, or DBIT. This is a report that Verizon puts out every single year. They interview many thousands of different companies in different markets, things like that, just to kind of figure out where their security incidents are happening and how they're happening and things like that. There are 2 key messages that I want to point out in this particular set of data, is that most of these breaches, number 1, involve human error, stolen credentials, or both. And number 2, most of your employees are reusing passwords, particularly passwords that they use for personal accounts, such as email or Instagram, right? So the most interesting part of this report, though, is that they found that 91% of people understand the risks of reusing their passwords, but 59% of them will just continue doing it anyway. So pretty crazy stuff. We're doing a good job at educating our users as far as the woes of reusing credentials, but in some cases they're just willingly not paying attention. Many cases they're just not paying attention or just don't care. So just to sum it up, static credentials are really killing us. They worked for a long time. They sufficed for a long time, I should say, but they're now just becoming a huge liability. So it's really interesting and kind of ironic, I find it. There's a process that Marriott uses and many other hotels use this for handling sensitive credentials, and that has proven to be very effective over the course of decades. It's known as the check-in, check-out process. I would argue that everybody here today probably has experienced this process in one way or another, and they know how efficient it is. They know how trusted it is. Nobody has questioned this process for quite some time. So consider for a moment the check-in, check-out process as it relates to secrets management. So in the first step of the process, I arrive at my hotel. I walk up to the reception desk. There's a hotel clerk there to greet me. I state that I have a reservation. I make a claim regarding my identity. The clerk asks me to prove my claim, so I present the clerk with some credentials. In this case, identification such as a passport or a driver's license issued by a trusted source, right? Once my credentials have been validated, my access is granted. There are two significant characteristics that exist with hotel access that need to be called out here. The first characteristic is access policy. There are varying levels of access at the hotel. One person may arrive at the hotel for their very first stay, and when their credential is provisioned by the hotel, it only has access to their room, likely. Another person may be a frequent traveler with a slew of perks attached to their account. And so they're sometimes able to receive access to additional things, right? Exercise facilities, VIP lounges, stuff like that. And then we have hotel staff, or more specifically, the hotel manager, who likely has access to everything at all times. So when a credential, in this case, a room key, is provisioned, some type of policy is used to provision it. So whereas some users may get access to one single thing, and others, as we discussed, may have access to multiple things, right? That's one characteristic of hotel access. The second characteristic I would say is time-based. Regardless of what access I'm given by the hotel staff, I know that the access at the end of my stay will be terminated as I agreed with the hotel. I have a date that I'm checking out, and when I check out, at the time that I'm supposed to check out, those credentials are revoked. So at the end of my stay, I know that I will no longer have access to whatever access I had when I showed up, right? I know it won't be any good anymore at that point, and that even if somebody managed to somehow clone my card, my room card, that's going to be useless too, right? Because it's tied to a credential that just no longer exists. So imagine if we were to handle room access the way we handle secrets management according to current best practices, such as a standard 90-day password rotation. What if you went to check into a hotel and were handed a key card and then politely told by the staff that any room key issued for your room in the last 90 days was still good to access your room? Who would be okay with that? Why are we okay with this when it comes to credentials, especially credentials that protect mounds of personal customer data? Nobody would be okay with this at a hotel. There's no reason to be okay with this when it comes to our protected information. So why Vault? And this is kind of the key. And even though these experiences happened to me after I had already been running Vault for a couple of years, these examples still ring true today as far as why I believe Vault is the best tool. Vault was designed and built to be an identity broker. It was essentially built to be your hotel clerk of secrets, your check-in and check-out system for your most prized possessions. With Vault, a user authenticates via some trusted identity provider, such as Active Directory. And then if that authentication is successful, the user is provided a key card, or in Vault's case, a token that has certain types of access to different things inside of Vault based on the associated security policies. The best part of this token is that it expires. You can set this to a day, you can set this to a month, whatever you feel like your organization needs at the time. And once that time limit expires, that token's no good anymore. That person must authenticate again to get another token to continue accessing secrets. So there's constantly a checkup on that user of do they still have access? Do they still have access to these secrets? Are they using this service anymore? There's all sorts of things you can do to configure that access to Vault so that you don't have to worry any longer about making sure there's rotation happening. So just like the Marriott brand, there are loads of different hotels you can check into, all from a single place. You have Starwood, you have Moxie, all sorts of different hotels that are part of the Marriott chain. Vault is similar in a sense, where it offers providers and integrations from the most common tools you'll find in technical stacks used in many organizations today. Kubernetes, OpenShift, VMware, AWS. Vault integrates with all of that. However, it doesn't just end there. We're introduced to new creative use cases by our users on a regular basis. The most amazing part of that is that Vault continues to adapt even to those new use cases, we may not have specifically designed parts of Vault to adapt to those use cases, but because Vault is so flexible and so simple to integrate with, we can just adapt to a lot of those new use cases right from the start. In addition to the flexibility that Vault offers across all these technologies, it provides a single interface for integration. This means that you can run Vault on any platform or cloud provider and offer a single consistent experience to your users. This means your support staff and users only have to be trained on one single tool, only need to write one set of code for secrets integration, and this significantly reduces overhead and human error across the business. The biggest advantage here is that Vault was built by practitioners for practitioners, and you'll hear this a lot from different HashiCorp employees, especially, but it's absolutely true. The one thing that was difficult for me as part of my job at Adobe was that I was essentially running an SRE team that was attached to security engineering. And everybody here probably knows how difficult it is to get users to adopt security tools because it's not necessarily seen as critical in profits, right? However, when you have a tool that works for the users rather than just meets security check marks, the users are more interested in integrating. They're more happy to do that work because they know it's simple to do, it's easy to use, and they can essentially automate a lot of their security work. So I want to say it's more recent news. It's not that recent. I think it came out about a year ago, but Gartner added a new secrets management category to their list, and Vault immediately took the top spot there. It truly is an amazing tool, one of a kind, and just so incredibly adaptable to everything going on in an enterprise. So in closing, I just want to say Vault proactively helps solve some of those scary problems, right? Security these days is a lot of manual rotation, following up, things like that. Vault enables you to still operate in that manner, but it allows you a path to transition easily to a place where you can go completely dynamic, where credentials only last for a few minutes to do what they're needed to do, and then they're just gone. Consider the earlier Marriott examples where the administrative credential for the customer database what was being used to farm data on lots of customers. What if that credential had just automatically expired 24 hours after creation? The scope of that breach would have been reduced from 4 years to 1 day. What a significant difference that would have been had they had a way to switch to dynamic credentials at the time. This is the real power of Vault. This is what it can do for you. This is what it can do for your business and your organization. It can really transform your secrets management experience into a process that can keep you safe and secure for decades. So that's all. Any questions? Please, feel free to pass those along to the EMEA team here, and they can get those over to me. We really appreciate your time. Thank you again for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Over to you, Rajiv.
All right. Thank you, Dan. My name is Rajiv. I'm in the sales team of the EMEAs, focusing on the Benelux market mainly, and some of the other emerging countries. And where Dan was focusing on why Vault, I'm focusing more on my experience in some of the logos that I've been dealing with in the past 2.5 years, and share some of my experiences that may help you in helping us sell Vault. Here are just some of the logos that I've been dealing with, and some of these are actually using Vault Enterprise. Now, key thing is what Dan actually already mentioned in terms of the amount of money or cost or potential cost involved is tremendous. And for that reason only, everybody should actually be focusing on a solution for secrets management and beyond that. And Vault, provides that like the best in the market, I have to say. What I wanted to talk about, and I hope it will be of value to you, is selling Vault. Where do you start? What are the features that most customers should consider, should actually need? Objection handling, there's one objection that comes up. I would like to touch on that. Partners, what is your role potentially in helping us be successful in positioning and putting Vault in a market together? And I'll touch on two customer cases briefly. If you look at what Vault provides, and again, I'm not going to touch on how Vault works exactly, but there's basically three streams that we work with our customers: secret management, data encryption, and advanced data protection. I'm going to focus more on the first part, where we try to land customers together, and that's usually with secret management as the basis. Data encryption and ADP is usually something that will come as a expansion once you've landed successfully, as we say. Key thing on this slide is the 1 million monthly downloads. That is the basis for how I would approach and how I approach the market. So where do you start? I would say start on the prospects that are already using open source, Vault open source. They're experienced, they know it. We have to make sure that you're not focusing on the individuals who are just trying it out, but you should be focusing on the teams that are already using it at a certain level. Maybe pre-production already, or maybe in production with some customizations around it. And with 1 million downloads, there's plenty of customers or prospects out there to focus on. Key thing is to have a champion. If you have an individual who's just happy to use Vault for his little environment, with no support base in the organization, may not be the best starting point. You really need to have somebody that's a potential champion, as we say. Secondly, I would say focus on landing first. Don't start a huge project. Just make sure, keep it simple, keep it limited. So start with 50 clients. As you may know, our pricing model is based on the number of clients and modules mainly. So if you start with a low number like 25, 50 clients, and you use just platform, which is part of the base install, I would say, which provides you DR, disaster recovery, and namespaces. That may be a good starting point. If they're more advanced, you may want to look at Auto and Seal or HA, which are part of the other two modules, governance and policy, and multi-DC. Once you've landed the customer, then you can start, well, once you've landed, you need to make them successful. So services from your side are also key to make sure that they successfully implement it and roll it out. And from there, you can grow it. Number of clients, if it's successful, you can add additional use cases, functionality, and other departments. Key, what I've noticed in my experience is have multiple streams or sales engagements in parallel. Why? Because it's not a compact sales cycle in most cases, because it involves quite a lot of different departments. You need to think about the security teams, developers, infrastructure, legal, and obviously procurement, which means that it will take somewhat longer. And if you have multiple engagements, obviously that's a quicker path to success, I would say. What are the features that I feel everybody should seriously consider, or everybody needs? The first one is, of course, support. We have 9x5 support for everything, basically. And from annual transactions of 100K plus, we can also offer gold support. But support is a safety net that customers require. Another one is compliance. In some industries, you have compliancy requirements, and you may need things like auto unseal, HSM integration, and those are only enterprise-only features. With that, we also have a number of reports and documentation that the security teams often require to vet our solution. And that's also only available on the enterprise products. A really important one is a feature is disaster recovery. So if you're using the open source version and you have it all set up, great, it works, does everything. However, if you, for whatever reason, lose your master key, you will not be able to retrieve that, recover that, recreate it. You simply lose access to your data. And one way to avoid that is to have a DR setup. So you have a second cluster for DR purposes. And that's part of the base platform, no additional cost, part of enterprise. And that is really something that you should have in place, because once you lose your key, we can't help you. You can't help yourself, and yeah, that will be a shame. Another one is namespaces that could potentially help, and potentially also have a good, a fairly tangible business case. Namespaces can help you consolidate situations where there are customers, prospects that have multiple clusters for different purposes, or running on different environment hardware and are managed separately. Using namespaces, you can actually consolidate that into virtual clusters within one Vault cluster, which could make things more affordable, also in terms of resources and management. The last one is that I've come across is HA and read replicas, and that's more for more mature environments where customers have actually deployed Vault open source well, at scale, maybe multi-geo, and realize that they have no safety net and they have no high availability. Maybe they're using a stretched cluster, which is not a best practice. They're experiencing latency issues, and then that's really the trigger to go for the multi-DC module, which is part of the enterprise offering, to get active HA clusters and maybe even read replicas to enhance your performance, your read performance, if you have large volumes going through the clusters. Now, what's the most common objection? Cost, I would say. Not many other objections, I have to say. It's usually cost, and that's due to, I would say, misunderstanding, because the focus on cost, whereas you should actually look at what is the value, what is the potential cost you're avoiding, and once you start to focus on that, like Dan just showed as well, then you realize that the investment is relatively small compared to the potential impact that it can have on your organization if you don't implement something like Vault. Now, one mistake that many make initially is to think that Vault is an open source tool developed by an individual and that you can download from download.com for €17.50 a month. That's not the case. Vault is a proper enterprise product with a huge organization behind it, developed by HashiCorp. It is an open source product, but it has also enterprise features which are not open source. and it's not a Mickey Mouse download product, so to say. It's a proper enterprise solution, which has enterprise value and therefore requires an enterprise investment as well. Yeah, like I mentioned before, focus on the value. Yeah, cost of data loss, like I mentioned, DR can help prevent losing the master key, right? And therefore access to your data. So that can be a costly exercise if you don't have anything in place for that. The other thing is something that Dan mentioned as well. If you work with dynamic secrets, you can, and there is a breach, you can limit the impact of a breach, because you can make sure that instead of all your web servers having the same password that's which is renewed once a year, maybe you can have all of them have individuals secrets credentials, and they're changed every day. And you can see how that has an impact on any breach and the reach of it. Now, there are still customers or prospects that still have limited budgets. So the only way there is to limit the number of clients, start small, make it successful, demonstrate the value, and then move up from there. Or what I also do is take the discussion a little bit broader within the organization and look at additional use cases that fit within the base investment. And therefore you can potentially tap into additional budgets as you provide more functionality that way. That may help your business case to get started with. Now, how can partners help? Not just only as simply as a reseller, but you can help in many ways. One of the main reasons for HashiCorp to work with partners is partners are close to our customers. They have extensive networks within these customers, and they have skills that go beyond just the HashiCorp products. And that makes you a perfect partner for HashiCorp. You can help with the proof of value, or POC as some call it. You can help with installation, implementation, and maybe an interesting one is to build up skills on the Sentinel side and the policy side, because I've noticed that there's not many skills in there, and you can add a tremendous amount of value to customers by helping them to get the most out of the policy engine, help them write it and maintain that, because policies can help a lot in optimizing the workflows and usage of Vault. And like I mentioned before, the sale of Vault involves multiple departments: security, CISO, legal, infrastructure development, operation teams, and it helps if you as a partner already have access to all, or at least some of them, and bring them together timely, so we can already start working with them together. The final one I think that is potentially interesting is, I mentioned before that we only provide the gold support option from 100K plus transactions. And that means that transactions below that, we can only offer 9x5 support. However, there are quite a few customers that start below 100K and do require 24/7 support. We can't be of help there, but maybe you can be. There are some partners out there already who offer 24/7 availability for customers to contact them already, be the first stop of support. And in some cases, some of these support issues can already be handled there. And others can already be prepared to be handed over to the 9x5 team once they open up. So that might be something where you can breach the gap between the 9x5 and 24/7 support until the customer grows beyond the 100K. transaction. Now, I showed you some logos. Two out of those, one is in the travel and accommodation services, and the other one is in the navigation business. They're using Vault Enterprise, and I've just put down just a few points to share on why they actually bought it, because they are companies that are actually known for using open source technology first. And when I talk about open source, I mean community open source, meaning without support, not enterprise support. So these companies actually have a lot of skills in the fields, yet they decided to buy Vault Enterprise. They are extensive users of open source. They understood what the limitations are. And in some cases, they built, their own version of it. But what happened with one of them is that they basically created a fork of an old open source version of Vault, building a stretch clusters across multiple geos, and that is not a best practice. And that was done in a time when there was no alternative, but now there is. And the challenge that they're facing now is that the people who designed that setup and who implemented it and who've supported it, they've left. So you get a situation where they created a fork with no means of upgrading it or any help internally or externally, and you're basically stuck. So they've taken a step to move to Vault Enterprise, and they've completely turned around their philosophy, and they want to have a best practices enterprise setup. Why? Because that way they can also easily access help from partners, from the vendor, but also find resources in the field that can easily be onboarded and add value to their setup. They also need 24/7 support. One of them provides end customer support with their environment that is using Vault, so they need to have a safety net. So therefore, 24/7 support was required. The scale and the business criticality has increased tremendously over the years, that they now reached a point where they can't rely on community support or even their own teams. As I mentioned before, less dependency on individuals. If you create a Franken-Vault, as I call it, you are dependent on the people who actually built it. And do you, as a company, do you want to be dependent on that individual or that small team and have no way to get any help from outside because it's so bespoke? And you see that more and more companies are reluctant to do that now, and they want to have something built on best practices. One of those two also moved up to a multi-G operation, and they were facing potential latency issues and performance issues. So they have now created a setup where they can where they have support, where they have DR in place, and if latency becomes an issue, they can easily switch over to implement HA without any further disturbance. So those were the key issues that enterprise tackled for them. Now, just to close, what I was talking about initially is we have open source here. That tackles only so much for the practitioner, the individual users. I was operating with the examples mainly in this space here with the enterprise, where we have the platform module with DR and namespaces. That should be the first starting point. In some cases, you can also add governance and policy if you are talking about compliance, and you need to have the integration with the HSM, you want to have auto unseal. Some of the initial customers who are already operating at scale but need to have high availability and performance, you end up with multi-data center and scale module. ADP is for a next phase, I would say, not to land with, so to say. That's all from my side. I hope you gained some value out of it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now or send us some emails, and I'll be happy to be of help.
Rajiv, thanks very much. It's Mark here again, team. Thanks very much for your time and attention. Rajiv, awesome insight into how you've positioned and sold and driven value across the customer base. From my perspective, some of the things that Dan and Rajiv mentioned were really insightful. I find that the hotel room key narrative really helps me to understand and provide guidance to partners and customers as to some of the value that we're trying to drive. I think one of the things from my perspective as a next step or a call to action is, as Rajiv mentioned, there's over 1 million monthly downloads of our open source technology. For all the partners on the call right now, the majority potentially of your house accounts or the prospects that you're already marketing to are using Vault, right? So I would ask, let's go and have the question, right? Let's go and ask the question, let's drive a campaign, let's understand if they're using it, how they're using it, and help them to understand the enterprise differentiation. And once we have that insight, then we can start. And as Rajiv mentioned, starting small is great, right? Starting small, creating a very low commercial barrier to entry, but then driving a very successful land, and helping them to understand that the utilization of, DR, HR, HA and namespaces from an enterprise feature and functionality perspective is going to help them drive additional value. For yourselves on the call, as Rajiv mentioned again, the services opportunity is huge, right? Leaving something untended is never going to drive the right kind of an outcome for the customer. And the services that you can deliver as a HashiCorp partner can help drive quicker value and ongoing value for the customer, and obviously ongoing expansion, as Rajiv mentioned. And as we all know, there's a huge amount of institutional knowledge that our partners have, right? We are still a very lean, very small sales team, and the breadth of engagement that our partners can help us to enjoy is not lost on us, right? So we might engage with a number of customers, but the engagement and the relationships and the knowledge that you have around those customers can help us collectively to drive a better outcome. So with that, as Rajiv mentioned, as Connor mentioned, I'd love to open up for some questions if there are any. One thing that I will mention is this is a series of masterclass sessions, the next of which will be on the 1st of June and will cover our console tool set. So far we've done the cloud operating model, we've done Terraform, we've done Vault today. Console will be the next one as we lead up to our HashiConf EU pinnacle, shall we say. But yes, with that, I'll stop talking. Thank you, Connor, for posting the registration page for the next masterclass. If there are any questions at all, I'd be very, very happy to take them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rajiv. So we've just had the one question come through so far, but there's still time for more. So please post them in the Q&A box if you have any. And it's around our managed services. And the question is there an opportunity for our partners to sell managed services like HCP Vault, which was recently released?
So the easy answer there is absolutely yes. HCP Vault is, as you mentioned, a service and operation that is driven and managed by HashiCorp. But the selling of that is absolutely something that is open to our partners. Yes. Any guidance or further information that you'd like on that, then again, just reach out to us directly and we can absolutely help.
Okay, Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Well, it looks like that's all for the questions. So with that, we'll conclude this session. As Mark mentioned a moment ago, we do have our next HashiCorp Masterclass taking place on the 1st of June, which will focus on console. And just a reminder that this session was also recorded, and we'll share that with you in the next 48 hours. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's Partner Masterclass, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks.